Hi everyone, Gabrielle here with you today. Join me as we create this really fun journal using 3 stencils that I designed for the Crafters Workshop. All information will be below in the description box as far as the products I'm using. So let's get started. Today I'm using a journal that I got from my local dollar store. My preference is to use the type that have the metal binding that you could just open up and remove. This way you can work on your project without making a mess of the rest of your journal. So I'm starting out here by using some black gesso. The one I'm using is by TCW, that's the Crafters Workshop. You get a nice good even coat, and you pretty much just have to use one coat to get it done. Now once I've dried that, I'm using some black modeling paste, again by TCW, and I'm using a stencil I designed for the Crafters Workshop called Riveted. This one is the 6x6, and I'm just randomly putting it in the corner, just so that it sort of fades out into the rest of the page. And now I'm taking another one called Hard Textures that I designed, and I'm just using the stone wall part on the bottom part of the book. Again, you can be very random with this, how you want to apply it to the page or to the cover. And here, after I dried those 2 sections, I began on the back cover, and I'm using the wood grain design. Again, you can apply it any which way you like. It can run any direction. This is just to create a fun background. Oh, it looks like I snuck in a little bit of the snake skin design here as well, so there is a 4th stencil I used here, but that's optional. You can stick with those 3 if you like. And now I'm coming back to my front cover, and I added a little bit of wood grain onto the front cover. And now I'm using another stencil that I have that's called Wanderlust, and I'm using the word maps in one of the little sections from the Riveted design. Now I'm also going to the back cover, and I'm using another section of the Wanderlust stencil. So just continue to kind of add designs to your cover. Now I have a little square piece of chipboard here, and I painted it black, and now I'm applying this little maps design here, this compass design, to that piece of chipboard, and that will give it a nice texture. So once you've thoroughly dried all the textures on your cover, it's time to move on to the painting part. I'm primarily using TCW, that's the Crafters Workshop Heavy Body Acrylic Paints. For this center section here, I'm mixing blue jelly bean with spun sugar to get this light blue. And then for the outer edge, I'm using a darker gold. This one is DecoArt, and the name is Venetian Gold. And I'm putting that on the outside edges. And so now what I'm just doing is blending the 2 colors together, just to get a nice random kind of pretty effect. And then I spray some water onto it so that some of the colors and things will run into the crevices. It just brings up the textures a little more by doing that. And now once it's dry, I decided I want to lift up some more of the textures, so I'm dry brushing more of that light blue color over the textures. Now by dry brushing, what I mean is that you're using primarily paint with not a lot of water on it, and you're angling your brush almost flat to run it over the textures, just so that you pick up some of the highlights. And don't be afraid to use a little piece of tissue or a rag to brush off things that you don't like on it, or dab away at it. This is, very organic. You just want to work at it, and when it's at the stage you like it, then you move on to the next stage. moving on to that little square piece of chipboard on which we had put that compass design. So what I'm doing now is painting it with some of the gold Crafters Workshop paint. This one is called Iridescent Gold, and again that's the heavy body acrylic paint. And I'm also moving on and painting a bunch of little cogs that I have. These are from Dusty Attic. I think there's like 4 pieces there. And I'm just giving them a little bit of the gold paint and mixing in a little bit of that soft blue color as well. And as you can see here, I'm giving the same treatment to the back side of my cover. And now going back to the front of the cover, I'm using some of that gold paint, putting it on the tip of my finger and just sort of gently hitting the relief areas of the design. So I'm picking up some of the wood grain design, some of the edges of the riveted, and as well as the stone wall design. It just helps pick up some of that texture. Now to pick up more of the design, I'm coming in with a Tim Holtz sponge dauber, and I'm using the ink called Black Soot, and I'm just gently rubbing it all around the edges and using a very light touch, kind of just running it over all the relief areas in my design. Actually, not all the relief areas, mainly the riveted part is what I was picking up. But also some of the wanderlust design. But definitely put lots of the inky part on the edges. It gives a nice framework to your design. And I'm doing the same thing with that little medallion piece that we've created. See how it really picks up the design to run the black ink over it. So here I'm just working out how I'm going to lay out my little bits of chipboard on this cover. I like to keep my covers pretty flat. Right here what I'm doing is using a little nail scissor to make a hole in each corner of our little medallion, and I'm using a copper brad to put in each corner just to, you know, go along with that sort of riveted look. And here I'm using Aleene's glue to just glue down my little cogs, and on top of that I'm adding our little centerpiece. And now to add a little extra glitz and glam to the cover, I'm adding a few adhesive gems. These I believe I got at a dollar store as well. Very inexpensive, but it adds a pretty touch to the cover. So as a final step, I'm applying these little metallic pellets called Prills, and I'm applying these using this gloss varnish by Dusty Attic. You could use any type of adhesive you like. Aleene's glue would work. I like to use this one just because it's clear. And here I'm just sprinkling on the pellets. I believe the color I used here was kind of a bronze color called Third Place. I will of course list everything I've used at the bottom under the description area under the video. So here is my finished book. I've attached the binding again, and you can kind of get a good look at it. And I've put a little bit of paper on the inside to give it a nice finished look. I hope you enjoyed my project today, and hope you'll give it a go. Thanks for watching.